Pick up your gear and open your chests. Throw on your armor and head out on a quest. Hey, hey, it's a brand new day. On the Sword Coast, your allies will help with blades and bows and magic as well. Hey, hey, heroes on their way. Fighting forever against overwhelming odds. Fighting together in favor of multiple gods. Idle champions of the forgotten realms. Idle champions, adventure never ends. Idle champions, get you all out there. Idle champions, you will say it again. Idle champions. From Waterdeep to Icewind, head out to Chull or Shadowfell, hey, hey. Together we stay. Walk to the monsters, walk to the boss, walk to the right, it's never a loss, hey, hey. Bad guys to slay. Fighting forever against overwhelming odds. Fighting together in favor of multiple gods. Idle champions of the forgotten realms. Idle champions, adventure never ends. Idle champions, get you all out there. Idle champions, you will say it again. Idle champions.
Hello everybody, welcome. I am Gaarawarr, and this is another Gaarwarr's Guide, the tutorial show. Today we will be tackling complicated champions for beginners. That's not to mean, well, I guess it's kind of to mean champions that are complicated for beginners, but also it means we're going to talk about complicated champions in a way that hopefully will uncomplicate them for beginners. Multiple meanings. Multiple meanings. Because there's, you know, with now 118 champions in the game, or actually, yeah, okay. Wednesday there'll be 119. Back-to-back events. Yeah, it's some of them got stuff going on that takes more than just a simple glance or just throwing them in the formation. So we're gonna go over that. Some of them are on the screen. I want to be clear. It's not gonna be like a super deep dive into each champion, because I've got like a list of 10 here that I was handed by Codename Entertainment, and they were like, we get a lot of questions about these. Maybe throw them in a tutorial show, and just, you know, yeah. So that's what we're gonna do. And 10 is a lot. So this won't be super deep dive into each one, but we'll talk about kind of a little bit of what's going on with each that makes it so that people are, you know, maybe hopefully will make things a little less confusing for people. Yeah, I believe the code. So folks, for if you ever want to know, the codes that go here in the cryptex, they don't go into the chat commands until someone like me actually appears on the stream. It's just the way it works. So you hit the code command early and it don't work. It'll show whatever was the last stream. But it's probably working now. It's probably working now. Probably, maybe. Maybe, probably. As always, questions are welcome. We have Gabe producing backstage. Say hi to Gabe, everybody. Hi, Gabe. You know, if you have questions, do the thing down below where you put question : before the question, and then Gabe will grab them. They'll throw them into a document. And that's how a lot of the Q&A shows work around here. So, you know, do that. And that's because I'm not going to have questions. I'm not going to answer questions generally as we're going. I will do that at the end. The code is not too long. I literally just used it. Hey, did you know there's a button down here that changes the length of the cryptex from 12 to 16 digits? Or if you just copy paste, it automatically changes the length of the cryptex. There you go. Complicated. That's Gaarawarr's Guide to Complicated Codes. Yeah. Yeah. That's why people like to just copy paste, then they don't have to hit the button. Then they don't have to hit the button. Alright, we're going to dive right in. Let's talk about Voronika. Voronika. Voronika is a slot 1 champion. Right here. Voronika is part of the Black Dice Society. Black Dice Society affiliation. And Voronika has a couple of things that maybe people don't catch right away. First off, Voronika's dead. Voronika's dead. Counts as dead all the time. I know at some point it may look like she's alive, walking around. Nope. Nope, undead. Undead. So you know, she interacts with other champions who like to, you know, interact with undead things. That isn't necessarily what makes her complicated, but I'm sure it makes her just daily interactions a little bit complicated. What actually makes Voronika complicated for most players who don't understand what's going on is Search for the Crown and the Inner Circle champion selections. These are kind of linked together. Search for the Crown says Voronika's search for the crown of the Raven Queen requires her to complete 3 goals. When Voronika completes all 3 goals, she acquires the crown, transforms into her Dark Lord form, unlocks her ultimate attack, and improves her basic attack. But you'll note, it doesn't tell you how to search for the crown. At least not on this screen. Not on this screen. Yeah. Over here it does, though. So here is what the search for the crown is. You have 3 goals. You have to defeat 2,000 enemies with her Inner Circle champion in the formation. This is why Inner Circle is a part of this. Voronika must reach level 750. That doesn't mean area is 750. It means you have to upgrade her to level 750. It tries to tell you this by like saying, hey, 110 out of 750. Hey, look, that's where I'm at on her level. And then you have to use 50 ultimate attacks with other champions. So that means using the ultimate attacks of other champions. So there's a little bit of a time investment to get Voronika to kind of produce her ultimate power. So, what's the Inner Circle champion? Well, her Inner Circle champion changes. Every time you level her up, she will offer up 3 options for Inner Circle champions. They may or may not be champions you wanted to use in this adventure. That's the roll of the dice. So there is an RNG component, and RNG, we've got a couple of champions here today that are on this list that are RNG champions, and that, you know, that makes things a little more complicated. So here's the thing: if you're rolling a formation and you're like, none of these are the champions that I want, you still have to use a champion from this list to get Voronika to her power level. I'm going to go ahead and choose Ariza. Yes, that's how you pronounce her name. We're doing pronunciations today. How to pronunciate complicated champions. Ariza, we're going to throw Ariza in the back. Now, Ariza has these little flowers on her portrait now. That doesn't show up here, just over here. That means she is the Inner Circle champion for Voronika. And now, if we go to search for the crown, we'll see kills are counting. Kills are counting. So we just have to have her in the formation, and suddenly we can get those 2,000 kills done lickety-split. We can also just level up Voronika. And we can get to her second specialization choice. It's up there. It's at level 1,000. But this is where you can choose to kind of customize what's going on. Are you assisting the puppet or disposing of the fool? This is a reference to the Inner Circle champion. You can either assist the puppet. This is when you are going to keep that champion in the formation. It is somebody you wanted in the formation. Or you can just dispose of them. That's if once you're done, you're going to kick them out of the formation. You got what you needed. Goodbye. It tends to be better if you get to keep them. That's the better RNG if it's somebody that you wanted. But otherwise, like in this case, we're just going to dispose of the fool and move along. Now you'll note I have no ultimates here because we haven't leveled up other people. But Voronika doesn't have one as well. I got her all the way to soft cap. Still no ultimates. Because again, she doesn't get her ultimate until she's searched for the crown. So we're going to have to level up some other people, and then we'll come back and we'll see what Voronika looks like once she's done. But that's how Voronika works. She has other things going on for her, but that's the part that can be confusing for some people. So remember, for Search for the Crown, it's always those same 3 goals. You got to kill a bunch of people. Welcome to Idle Champions. You got to kill a bunch of people with an Inner Circle champion of the formation. You've got to use a bunch of ultimates, and you have to level her up to a certain point. That's it. Once you understand those things, real straightforward. This does mean Voronika is not somebody you can automate via Modron automation, because the Inner Circle champion changes every time. She is a manual play champion. That's just the way it is. Speaking of, let's talk about another manual play champion. Let's talk about Dungeon Master. We're going to jump ahead. Dungeon Master, you might recognize him from the 80s cartoon. Dungeon Master is fairly straightforward. He has a couple abilities that kind of throw people off. One is his Dungeon Master rules. That doesn't mean, oh, you rule, dude, although it kind of does. It just means Dungeon Master makes the rules, and his rules say Dungeon Master is eligible to start in all adventures, even if the patron variant or other restriction would say otherwise. So, look, any adventure or variant in the game, Dungeon Master can go in. It doesn't matter what the rules of that adventure say. Now, that means you can put them in the adventure. Once they're in the adventure, if there are rules of the adventure or variant that can boot someone out, the Dungeon Master can get kicked. But basically, Dungeon Master can get into any party, but he can't always stay. So that's kind of one of the neat features. If you're like, wait, why does it say I can only use these champions, but then Dungeon Master is available? People get confused. It's because Dungeon Master makes the rules. Now, the thing that kind of can make them a little complicated, and kind of what is their power, in the same way that for Voronika, sometimes the power is the puppet. Dungeon Master has an ability that we're not going to see today because I'm just in a free play. But when you get to their specialization path, if you are in a variant, an adventure or a variant where you can only use certain champions, or you're in a patron variant and it restricts out a lot of options. So when you go over here, it has like circles with a line through them or something, and you're not allowed to use those. Dungeon Master has a specialization called Special Guest Star. And when you put in Dungeon Master and level him up to 100, that's their specialization choice upgrade, it will randomly, to a certain degree, roll one of those champions and allow you to bring them in along with Dungeon Master. They become the special guest star for this episode of Idle Champions. That's kind of where they're going with that. It'll show up over here on the left, and there will be a little notification on the card, kind of like with the roses here for Voronika. Yeah. That's the way Dungeon Master works. Now, again, it's somewhat random, but there is a kind of guaranteed mechanic. Say you're on an adventure, and it restricts out a certain thing, and you go to look at, say, slot 4, and everyone in slot 4 is nobody there is allowed in the adventure. But in every other slot, there's at least a champion that's available. Dungeon Master will then only pull from the slot that has no one available. So there will be no way then to get a champion from the other slots. It will be one of the ones from the slot that has nothing available. It does have that slight additional rule to it, but it is going to be random who arrives from that slot. In the case of both Dungeon Master and Voronika, if I were to come over here and let's say we can do this with Voronika, I can't demonstrate it with Dungeon Master, but I reset the specializations with a potion of specialization. That's a thing. I get the same 3 options, because it's not going to with this RNG. The RNG is determined effectively when the adventure starts, and it's locked in for that adventure. You can't change it. If you didn't like who your puppet was, or you didn't like who your special guest star was, you wouldn't. I mean, you can restart the adventure, re-roll, see what happens. There are people who, look, I have done it before, but because of the RNG nature of it, you could be sitting there re-rolling, restarting the adventure and re-rolling for hours, because there's no guarantee. It's not like it's going to go through each of them in order or something. So is it possible to do that? Yes. Is it enjoyable to do that? I don't think so. I've tried it. No thanks. So usually I just look, especially with Dungeon Master, if I'm in a highly restricted variant, I'll pop into the variant. I'll see, oh, hey, let's see who Dungeon Master throws in. And then I will keep that in mind, but, you know, I'm not necessarily going to reroll. If that's the only way you can get through that adventure, sure, if you want to spend the time on it, go for it. But believe me when I say, after the 5.5 years I've played this game, that adventure or variant will be doable at some point in the future without all of that. Just because more power arrives all the time. So, you know, you do you, though. You do you. All right, so that's how Dungeon Master works. That's the big thing. There is another. I will point out. Oh, thanks. It pointed this out for me. Every now and then, Dungeon Master leaves the formation, and Uni the Unicorn arrives. You still get bonuses. They just adjust a little bit. And then on change, there's a chance the Unicorn's going to be there. The chance Dungeon Master's going to be there. It's just kind of RNG. That's just how Dungeon Master is, because that's kind of how he was in the cartoons, and I think it's great. They have an ultimate. Their ultimate rewinds other champions' ultimates. So, along with giving you a damage boost. But I wouldn't want to use this right now on its own, because I don't have any other ultimates on cooldown. But when we do, I can pop one ultimate, then I can hit Dungeon Masters, get the other one back, and hit it again. It's nice. So Dungeon Master does have, a couple things that are a little finicky, which is probably why he doesn't get, seen as much in formations. But, God, that vacation skin. Let me put him back in his white robes to match Shaka and Ariza. But yeah, that's Dungeon Master. Let's go back and check in on Voronika. Okay, so we do have the level. We're 30% through this. It's going to take a little while. We still got to get the ultimates too. All right. So let us talk about... Where do I want to go next? Let's talk about Shaka. Shaka. Shaka is a member of Rivals Waterdeep, which is ending their run as an actual play TTRPG show, but kudos to them for the years and years of amazing shows. We are fortunate to have all of their champions in the game, and Shaka is one of them. So, Shaka, again, it's like a theme. RNG component to Shaka. Shaka's core of the kit and the thing that can make them confusing to people is a celestial puzzle. So Shaka attempts to solve a celestial puzzle with the potential for great rewards. 4 random slots in the formation are assigned a random tag. Now that's these formation slots, not these bench slots. These ones out here. For each champion in these slots that match the slot's tag, Shaka buffs the party. And that stacks multiplicatively. That's the good way. So this is a good thing to do for you. The total effect is buffed by 20% for each other Rivals Waterdeep champion of the formation. That's a nice bonus, but matching lots of tags is the thing. The tags show up here. As long as there's a champion in the slot, the tag is going to show up. Like you see here, it didn't show up before I put a rise in, but then it did afterwards. So you get things like speed, female non-binary, halfling, male non-binary, human, and others. So it's any of these tags that you see up here. Male, tiefling, warlock, healing, support, etc. So you want to, if you can adjust your formation to match the tags, that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. So this formation obviously doesn't really do that very well. We don't have any halflings in. Do we have a human? Oh, yeah, of course. Dungeon Master's human. But right now it's uni, but it still counts as human. As you can see, once I put somebody in the matches, it goes from just being tagged to tag and glowy around their feet. So there's a little glow effect to let you know that you lit it up. We can switch here male non-binary. We can switch here female non-binary. I don't think I have a speed champion in currently, so we're just out of luck there. But this would give me 3 matching tags for Shaka. That's how it works. Now this wouldn't be an ideal situation because this is not a tank. Right? So sometimes the RNG about it is that it just doesn't really fit what's going on. So again, sometimes Shaka maybe not can't give you every last bit of their potential, but if you can match if you can even just match a couple tags, 2 is at least unlocking their multiplicative potential. You can get a solid buff. Now the nice thing is they also have Sunday Edition, one of their specializations. Adds another slot to the formation. This is really the only one you should be using. Better luck next time, we'll re-roll those slots, but again, we just talked about how to re-roll RNG, like starting an adventure over. It's better to have a potential for 5 multiplicatively stacking bonuses than just, 4. Which maybe you can't even do all of, right? At least you're giving yourself another shot. And I believe, didn't we get a feat? Yes, Puzzle Master. You can add an additional slot in the formation with Puzzle Master. So right now I've got like 6 tags throughout the formation. That's the chance for lots of multiplicative goodness. That's right. Oh, okay. Don't have what we need to really light all that up, but it gives me more options, right? This is how Shaka works. Pretty straightforward. They have some other things going on, like they've got a cool ultimate. There's 2 options for their ultimate. One puts a barrier of light here that makes enemies miss. One puts a barrier of light over here that can insta-kill enemies. I like that one. See, everything just dies. Everything just dies. It can one-shot bosses. I think it has to do with its potential, like the amount of damage it's potentially doing. It's nice. Now, I just fired off an ultimate. Now I'm going to hit Dungeon Master's ultimate, and we're going to get this ultimate back. Watch the left side of the screen, folks. There he is. Hey, he did his thing. And now I can fire this off again. I love that he pokes in, even though he's not here, and goes, I got this. There we go. So that's how we can refresh ultimates. I'm gonna throw some friends down there to fire those off for Voronika. And we're gonna talk about another champion. Oh, is it Rise's ASMR? Yes, there we go. Cool. I forget sometimes. There's 118 champions in the game. Let's get another RNG champion out of the way. Hi, Ellywick. Ellywick Tumblestrom, the greatest bard in the multiverse. Ellywick arrived in the game from the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms Magic the Gathering set. So it was the first kind of crossover champion. And Ellywick is RNG personified because her entire kit, if you know Dungeons & Dragons, you're going to understand what's going on here. Her entire kit is built around the deck of many things. Bum, bum, bum. The deck of many things can either be wonderful, meh, or horrible. And let's be honest, it probably trends towards horrible for most people. But this is, the longest ability description in the game, as you can see. This is one ability. And it interacts with her other abilities. So you've got to kind of understand all of it. Yay. So here's the way it works. As you can see, Ellywick over here on her loot has a card that has been pulled from the deck of many things. It shows up here. It's the blue card. Ellywick draws a random card from the deck of many things, getting a random effect from below. The effect persists until she draws a new card. She only draws a new random card from the deck of many things after completing 100 areas in the formation. So you only get one card every 100 completed areas. You get a bad card, you got to leave her in to get a chance at a good card. The more cards, the merrier. She can only have one out at a time, but they create stacks. We'll talk about that in a moment, and you want to build that up. So she is RNG, and you really want her in from the beginning of your run. This is one of the keys to Ellywick. You want her in, hopefully at Area 1, leveled up to 20, so she can start pulling cards. And the further you can push, the higher the potential of her bonuses. So people who are only going to go 125 levels aren't going to see a whole lot. They'll see 2 cards. But people who go 1,500, they're going to see a lot of cards and a lot of stacks. And RNG is going to determine whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for them. So the card she pulls replaces any card she's already holding, and she can draw the same card multiple times during an adventure, but not twice in a row. So you can't just get the same card over and over. That's never going to happen. With random luck, you could get the same 2 cards over and over, but RNG is going to RNG. There's a night card, a moon card, a fates card, a flames card, and a gem card. That gem card is truly, truly outrageous. Night grants 1 night stack for every 100 enemies defeated while the card is active. It buffs their powerful following ability. That's their actual pushing buff that they have, is powerful following. So night cards are for buffers, for damage. Moon grants 1 stack for each boss loot sack earned while the card is active. And then it buffs the greatest song in the multiverse ability, which, if I remember correctly, that's the debuff. Oh yeah, max health. So that reduces max health of enemies, and it can stack. Fates. This turns off all existing stacks that you've earned. It's like, hi, remember all those bonuses you just RNG'd your way through? I'm taking them all away. Now, if you can go the full 100 levels, 100 areas still, and draw a new card, all existing stacks you had before Fates turned them all off get increased by 25%. So it's kind of like, hi, I'm going to make your life worse for 100 areas, but then I'm going to give you a nice buff in return. Flames, so it's kind of bad, but maybe good? Maybe? Flames is bad, but a little good. This grants 1 flame stack when the card is drawn. All monsters move 100% faster and deal 100% more damage for each flame stack you have. When this one goes real bad, when you end up with like 4 or 5 flame stacks, the monsters are flying at you and they're doing a lot of damage, and the people don't like that, usually. I like when they move fast. That's why I say maybe it's a good thing, but, you know, I could do without the extra damage. Come to my sword quicker. Yes, thank you. But hit me harder? No, thanks. And then gems. Gain 1 gem stack for every 3 gems collected while the card is active. Gems buff Fortunate Soul. Fortunate Soul is the gold find ability on Ellywick. So, as you can see, there's a lot of RNG going on with Ellywick. Look, we've got a white card now. Because the thing is it tracks. It isn't just 100 areas in this adventure. She pulled that blue card the last time I used her. It knows. It remembers. So it's going to just do every 100 areas. Okay. Oh, no, wait. It's blue. Is this broken? It's broken. It's not supposed to be showing white. It's supposed to be showing blue. Never mind. But it will sit here and track those areas. What are we on? Yeah, it's night stacks. That's weird. It shouldn't be, yeah, something's weird. Areas until next draw 80, that's not right. That's not right. Something's going on with her in the background. It's throwing things off. Her specializations, though, can focus you a little bit. Yeah, see, the blue card should be faster tempo, but we have a white card. That's weird. So you can choose to focus a little harder on the nights, the moons, or the gems. Up to you. Do you want to try to get higher damage? Do you want to try to get to reduce their health more, or do you want to try to get a higher gold find? That's your choice. It does decrease the other options. That does mean once you get there, flames and fates can actually happen more often because of how percentages work. It's weird. It's weird. It's just the way it is. All right. I'm going to park a familiar over here. So let's go check in on Search for the Crown. We're at 19 out of 50 ultimate stacks, and we're about 75% of the way through. Almost 80% of the way through the kills we need. So Voronika approaching her Dark Lord form. Nice. Nice. And then we can ditch Ariza. We can dispose of the fool. All right. Let's talk about some other champions. Let's talk about Xerophon. Xerophon is an evergreen champion that comes from the Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign. Right out the gate, Xerophon wants you to start making specialization choices, and Xerophon has a lot of choices for you to make. Xerophon, their kit kind of revolves around perfect imitation, which is their ultimate, and how it interacts with other things. When you first put Xerophon in, I find that it gives you a specialization choice before you really understand what's going on with specialization choices. This can make Xerophon very complicated. Xerophon is a doppelganger. Pronouns they, them. They are non-binary because they basically can turn into whatever they want, whenever they want, and that's actually what perfect imitation does. If I hit perfect imitation, they are going to turn into, you see them right here, they're going to turn into something that appeared on the screen at some point in this area. And now we're a crab. Xerophon's feeling crabby. And they'll stay that way for 60 seconds. Now, while they're doing that, they're buffing your party. And if this enemy shows up on the screen again while they're in this form, you get a bigger buff. Now the key here, I'm going to take this off because we really want. Key here is Xerophon's ultimate starts off at 10 minutes. But you want to hit the ultimate all the time. And the way you actually reduce this isn't with an item. They have full item support, meaning there's nothing about their ultimates here. It's with this. It's with these choices that you make in the specializations. You want to pick. They give us numbers here. This is one of those instances where you want to pick the higher number every time. So I'm gonna go 5. I'm missing one champion in this formation, but whatever. Oh, 9. Oh, that's a fantastic one. Because every time I pick one of these, you'll note the cooldown goes down. And it goes down based off the amount of champions that are in the specialization I select. So this one's going to be a 7. We're at 460 seconds. Once I choose it, we're down to 390 seconds. So as you can see, that's basic math. 10 seconds per choice you choose. So you can get this down if, with a proper formation, you can get this ultimate down pretty low. This is everything that's going on here. You don't even have to really pay attention. You just have to look at the numbers. And you want to pick the highest one every time. Every time. There we go. We're done. Okay. So, I got this down to 200 seconds. But I still want to hit it as often as possible because of one of their abilities. So this combination of Dungeon Master with Xerophon is absolutely fantastic. Because Dungeon Master is just going to go ahead and reset that. And we get 2 for the price of 1. So we can stack twice as quickly. Now here's the thing. The reason we want to do this gets explained to us down here in repeated imitation. Repeated imitation increases the damage bonus of perfect imitation, which is the ultimate, the buff you get when you're in ultimate form, by 5% each time it is used in an adventure, stacking multiplicatively, that's the good way, up to 500 times. Now, they threw 500 in there not because they want you to achieve 500 stacks. That would take a very long time. So I just said it's like 200 seconds right now. That's a little over 3 minutes. No one's... 1,500 minutes is not a thing you really want to do. Even 750 minutes, that's way too long to be trying to stack that up. They just threw a high number up there because they want to let you know that, hey, this can get big. They didn't want to cap it too low. But just know, 5% multiplicative is nice. That's the good way. And having lots of stacks means if you're real close to completing a variant with Xerophon, and yeah, maybe you do walk away, throw it in the background for an hour and let them boost the damage and then come back. Because as long as you've still got stacks left you can earn, there's still power on the table. So kind of a long, slow burn champion. I do wish they could stack up a little quicker. If I threw another champion in here, we can, let's see, 200. If I throw an alien, how much does that help? Well, I got 20 off. Oh, that got a lot off. We're down to 150. Well, we'll leave Jarlax's line for a moment. But that's what's going on. That's the big bonus. Now they've got some other bonuses, and one's based off who you didn't pick, and yada yada yada, so that you can have some consistent buffs going on. But the big thing about Xerophon is hitting that ultimate over and over and over again. So you really do want a familiar parked on Xerophon's ultimate, and then you just want to push. Because even right out the gate, you're going to get some decent bonuses. I've got 15 adaptable stacks. This is for what you didn't match with, and that's given me an E10 buff. That's going to help me push just fine for quite a while. Repeated imitation, though, is going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and ultimately end up being potentially the biggest buff you have. Now, if you don't want to deal with repeated imitation, if you I just want power, I don't want to deal with this stack stuff, then instead you would pick the lower number when you're doing the stuff over here. you would pick the lower number. And that is because adaptable gets buffed by the amount that you didn't choose. So if I go through and I pick all of the lower numbers, and then we go look at their adaptable buff, you got a little bit bigger. It's not a whole lot bigger, but you'd have consistent pure damage if that's what you wanted. It's just not gonna get much better than that. So I truly think you want to ignore adaptable. I'm going back to the other way because, again, I think you go the higher one every time is going to get you the most potential. There are people who will build a Xerophon stacking formation that is 10 all the champions match one or the other. They'll try to do that to try to get the maximum cooldown reduction, and then they'll just stack up Xerophon, and then they'll put a pushing formation in. I think that's a lot of work, and I'm lazy. So if you're like me, and I know I am, just pick the stuff, park a familiar on here, and play. How we doing? 35 out of 50. It's going to go slower. Oh, we can take Ariza out now because we killed as many as we needed. Thanks for hanging out, Ariza. Appreciate you. Oh, actually, we need to leave her in for Xerophon. My bad. All right. Let us talk about another champion then. Let's talk about Beadle and Grimm. Or as lately I like to call them, Baldur's Gate. I don't know why. It's because it's B&G. Beadle and Grimm. I know it just says Beadle here, but trust me, folks, this is 2 champions, not just one. Beadle is the dwarf rogue wizard who is supporting Gold Find. And if I hit the ultimate tag team back again, check it to wreck it. Let's begin. Boom! Suddenly, I have a whole other champion here. It's Grimm, folks! The human barbarian DPS support. They are 2 champions in one. They are 2 champions in one. That's their kit. That's their thing. This is their gimmick. And honestly, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. They're pretty straightforward. Usually people will just pick what they want sometimes. They'll go, well, I want I want to run them as DPS, so I go Grimm. Or I want support, so I'll go Beadle. And that's fine. Understand, though, Grimm has a debuff. That's their support feature. And it's beefy. I call it the beer debuff. Because as it stacks up on enemies, it looks like a mug of beer. It starts out empty, and it fills up. And the nice thing about it, it's what we call in this game sticky, which means they can come out. You can swap them over to Beadle, and you get the debuff and Beadle's awesome support buff at the same time. And honestly, I think that's kind of the way I like to run them when I'm pushing deep. I will, once we get to their wall, I will just park a familiar and tag team between them, and I'll get the build up of the beer debuff, and then swap over, and the combo of the 2 helps me push forward. However, the way that works is, one of the things that happens is each of them has different buffs, but they have this thing called long rest, and this is what complicates some things for people. Their buffs get stronger the longer they're not in the formation. So right now, Beadle is getting buffed. Beadle is getting buffed because Beadle's taking a long rest in the background. And the longer I leave Grimm in, the stronger Beadle is when they rejoin the formation. If we come over here, you'll get a timer. So right now I have 19 stacks. It's 1 stack every 10 seconds. And once I swap over, which I'll do once their ultimate's back up, they start losing stacks at the same rate. So the longer they are out of the formation, the bigger their buff gets. The longer they're in the formation, the weaker their buff gets. Thus why a lot of people will decide, well, what buff do I want when I get to my wall to try to complete whatever I'm doing, like a variant or whatever. What buff do I really want? And they'll put the opposite champion in. So I like running Grimm as far as I can because it buffs Beadle, and I have the debuff to rely on to help get me as deep as I can. And then when I stack up that debuff on that hopefully final boss and then tag team Grimm in, or Beadle in, wrecked. Just destroys things, because then Beadle will have an absolutely monster buff coming in from the background. I've seen people do it both ways, and then again, if I get to the point and I'm trying to push and I can't push any further, I will swap in and go as far as I can, and then I'll let them just tag team back and forth with a familiar, because then at least I'm getting some buff, the best of both worlds, the debuff and the buff later on. So I'm going to tag them back in again. Boom. There we go. And you'll see now stuff's ticking down. Right, so I had a large multiplier. I got a bonus of about 4,000% for a short number of stacks. And now it's ticking down, and every time it ticks down, Grimm's ticks up. So this is what kind of makes them feel a little complicated. I will say they do have a level 0, like a passive thing, is what they're calling it now, inseparable. If either Beadle or Grimm qualifies for an adventure, they both do. They can both be in. So even if you've got a dwarf in, like even though you might have Beadle showing on the bench, if it says only humans are allowed, Beadle can come in because Grimm is human. Okay, so that's Beadle and Grimm. Obviously, they've got a lot more going on in their kit, but that's kind of the thing that throws people off, is like, what's with this tag team thing? They are currently our only tag team champion. And, it confuses some people a little bit, because the people are used to just, I just put a champion in and I leave them. And that's not really how you get the best out of Beadle and Grimm. So keep that in mind. Specializations, well, they're not really. There's this whole thing there, but it's not really what makes them complicated. Not really what makes them complicated. Voronika is coming closer, I know. She will change forms when she finally finds her crown. We're real close. We're 8 away. Voronika coming in hot. All right, let's talk about Arkhan. Nerds isn't really a tag team. Nerds is a whole other box of candy. Let's talk about Arkhan. Alright, Arkhan is one of the core 12 champions, and yet is one of the complicated champions in the game. People get to Arkhan and they're like, Arkhan, it's Arkhan the Cruel. They're in slot 12. It costs so much to get them into my formation. They're gonna do so much damage, right? Arkhan has rules. Arkhan only does lots of damage in very specific situations. That's what makes Arkhan complicated. Arkhan Dragonborn Paladin DPS tanking. So they can be a tank, but they really only want to be a tank for evil DPS, to be clear. They'll only buff evil DPS. And they'll tank for themselves. The big thing that Arkhan relies on is bulk up and usurped power. I was trying to think about, like, how do I tell you which one of these to use? And I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, the best option is gonna be usurped power, but it feels like it's kind of item based. Arkhan has an item that buffs these. Excuse me. And until you have it, and you've got a good version of it, a powerful version of it, bulk up kind of feels better than usurped power to me. But bulk up is like, hi, I'm only going to be in the front column as a tank. Usurp power, he can be anywhere in the formation. Usurp power tends to be the big one. They both function in a similar way. They're both based around positional formation abilities. We're going to talk about this 3 times today. Oh, I'm going to have a headache after this. Positional formation abilities. What is a positional formation ability? A positional formation ability is an ability, so like Get Buff, that has a reference to where it's buffing in the formation, not who necessarily, but where. So Get Buff for Beadle is a positional formation ability because it says it increases the damage of champions, but only if they're within 2 slots of Beadle. So there is a positional reference. There's a positional reference. This is what you're looking for Arkhan and a couple other champions. Whenever a champion says they work off positional formation abilities, this is what they're talking about. It's not something like this part where it's whenever Beadle damages an enemy, that enemy drops more gold. That's not a positional formation ability because that's about the enemy. It's not about the layout of your formation. Okay. Yeah. And this, like, it increases the effect based off champion. That's not positional. Even if it's like it increases the effect based off champions adjacent to. That's not a positional formation ability because you have to look at when they're talking about positional formation abilities, they're talking about where the ability affects things, not what buffs the ability. So it's the positional relation of the buff. Brunor, tutorial dwarf himself, only buffs in his column. That's a positional formation ability. Celeste, buffs adjacent champions. That's a positional formation ability. Calliope, buffs champions in front of her, like the column in front. That's positional formation ability. Nayeli buffs champions in the column behind. That's a positional formation ability. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for those notes that say buffs and then direction, some kind of direction. Okay, now that we have a bit of a primer on positional formation abilities, Arkhan with bulk up. Stop. I don't need a phone call right now. Bulk up. All positional formation abilities Arkhan receives are buffed by a large amount, but only if Arkhan's in the front column. Fairly limited. Again, I only find this useful if I have a very, if it's early game and I'm forced to use him as a tank, and because I just don't have good itemization. Usurp power, Arkhan receives all positional formation abilities received by adjacent champions that don't already target Arkhan, and buffs them by the similar number. This is much more flexible. So not only can you put Arkhan anywhere in the formation, you want to, because you want to place Arkhan and all the other champions in a situation where their positional formation abilities aren't hitting him, but are hitting people directly next to them. So like in this situation, you might put Arkhan here in the middle, and you would target buffs that are going to hit these two champions, Ariza and Beadle and Grimm. As long as your buffs are applying to Ariza and Beadle and Grimm, and they're not hitting Arkhan, he's going to be able to usurp them. And you get a nice indicator. We're going to go look at it. You're going to get a nice indicator here if we go under the Formation Buffs tab when it's usurped. Okay, so calculating guidance from Voronika would normally be buffing by E11, 5E11. But because it's getting usurped, we're getting it at 1E14. Yeah, that's nice. So you want to look for things like that. Ellywick, we would normally getting at 9E09. We're getting it 2E12. Right, so you're going to get a nice bonus. This is supported by an item. Which one is it? 4? It's 4. So the higher the item level, and if it's gilded, and the higher the rarity, the bigger the bonus you're getting when you usurp. the bigger the bonus you're getting when you usurp. But it does not work if we note. We come back over here and we look. We're getting adaptable from Xerophon. There's no bonus. It's because adaptable from Xerophon increases the damage of all champions by that amount. So anything that says increases the damage of all champions, Arkhan's just like, wow, thanks. I guess. Because he really wants the positional formation abilities. And honestly, nothing else. Like, he just wants somebody who has lots and lots of positional formation abilities. But you can't always get that, so sometimes you have to take what you can get. Like here, we get buff is hitting Arkhan, but if we move Beadle back here, suddenly we will be able to get buffed at a much higher level, right? That's Arkhan. So it's kind of changes the formation building game, because you need to not hit Arkhan with buffs. You need to hit the people near Arkhan with buffs, and you want to hit them with and you want champions that are pretty much only positional formation abilities, or primarily, and really solid ones. There's, so early on when you just have those starting champions, Arkhan's doesn't really work that well, because there are a number of positional formation abilities, but maybe not enough, right? So he can be okay, but he can't really be great until you start collecting more champions. That's Arkhan. Oh, I do want to keep doing this. Why did I stop? There we go. Hey, we're a skeleton now. All right. Voronika has transformed. If you'll notice, she doesn't look like a ghost anymore. That means I can dispose of this fool. Sorry, Ariza. Voronika has found her crown. You can see it. She's wearing it. This is what she looked like before. She is no longer there. She is now searched for the crown. This is what you're trying to get to with Voronika. And I could see I got about 175 levels in, 150 to 175 levels in before that happened. Naturally. It could have been quicker. Could have been quicker if I had done the ultimates on more people. That's really what you're looking for. That's kind of the confusing part, is now she has her ultimate. Her ultimate has got a knockback and a survivability feature for everybody. She has a stronger basic attack. She actually does, she lights targets on fire when she hits them. That's cool. That's helpful, especially for hit-based bosses. Anybody with segmented health, as long as she's hitting them for enough damage, it's going to remove a chunk. Yeah. There we go. So we finally made it back to Voronika. All right. I'm going to ditch everybody that isn't required here. Let's talk about Valentine. Valentine also arrives from Black Die Society. Shocker that she'd also be a complicated champion. So Valentine's big thing is that she likes position formation abilities. Did I mention that position formation abilities are a thing in the game, and that we were going to talk about some of these champions? It's all around Tregram. I want to say Tregram all the time, but I believe it's Tregram. The aberrant spirit in Valentine's brain, yes, we went there, telepathically reaches out to the other champions. For each positional formation ability affecting Valentine, she increases the damage of all champions with the DPS roll by 100%, and it stacks multiplicatively. Remember, that's the good way. So, unlike Arkhan, Valentine gets this cool little indicator that tells you how many positional formation abilities she's receiving. It's these 5 arrows pointing in and the number. The key here is, once again, you're going to want to build with a lot of people that have positional formation abilities, but you're also going to want to point all of those positional formation abilities at Valentine and make that number as high as possible. Even if it means you're not hitting your DPS with them. I know that sounds weird. But she's got another ability for that. Socialite. Valentine duplicates any positional formation abilities that are affecting her. 2 champions in the formation with the DPS role. So, if given ideally you hit them both, because the second part says they get a boost if you hit them twice. If you hit the DPS and Valentine, bonus. But if you are forced to choose, you are freed up and you actually want to ignore the primary DPS, focus the buff on Valentine. Because remember, her buff stacks multiplicatively. So it is more important that she gets big number so that the buff goes through the roof. Okay. This is not a great these are not great champions for that. We've got a 3. There are lots of champions that have multiple positional formation abilities. You can get, I think the most I've ever gotten Valentine up to is like a 9. 9. I was pretty happy with that worked out with a good formation. But I'm sure, you know, there are situations where you could go higher. Higher isn't always better. Really, you're combining the power of the champion with the positional formation ability with Valentine to get a good overall bonus. If you can do that with your strongest champions and get 10 plus, whoo, nice. But, you know, sometimes you don't necessarily want to sacrifice just for the magic number. That's the big thing with Valentine. I will say she also does kind of the same thing with Goldfind. She's a support gold champion. The bigger the number, the more gold you get too. So she's great in for producing a lot of gold as well. She's just wonderful, a wonderful, enjoyable person all around. And she's got specializations for that. So if you're going Goldfind, you go family business. If you're going just that stack damage, you're going here. She has an interaction with Tatiana, who's part of the Black Die Society, and there's a whole thing there too. But just know she spreads buffs. As long as you're buffing her, she's giving that to anyone with the DPS tag in your formation. And that's the big deal with Valentine. That's what you want. You want this number high as possible. If it's not, if it's a 1 or 2 or even a 3, if it's a 1, there's definitely better champions to have in your formation because there's no multiplicative bonuses going on at all. But if it's a 2 or a 3, there may be better options. You want to get it as big as it can. Is that everybody that I had showing? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're missing 2. What order do I want to do these in? We got 2 more champions, folks. Do I want Headache Champion first? Yeah, we're going to do Headache Champion first. Okay. While we're talking about positional formation abilities, let's talk about Warduke. I mean Duke. Warduke. Warduke, folks. He's in the game. Human fighter, chaotic evil, and boy, is he ever. DPS tanking. Folks, I've been playing this game for 5.5 years, and Warduke gives me a headache. So if you find Warduke complicated, it's not just because you're a beginner. Warduke exists for people who want to get real crunchy with their video games. And Warduke keys off of positional formation abilities. Any champion who keys off positional formation and abilities in this game kind of breaks the way formation building goes. Because normally you're trying to put your, buff just everybody and get the biggest buffs. But whenever you have somebody that triggers off positional formation abilities, they're very selfish. They want those positional formation abilities. Warduke, though, is like, I want your buffs, but not in the way you normally give them to me. When you put Warduke in the game, every positional formation ability, with a couple exceptions, gets inverted. And when I say inverted, I don't mean the way that normal, regular people mean inverted. I mean the way software developers mean inverted. It took me a while to understand this difference. And this is part of, I think, what makes Warduke complicated for someone like me. It's chaotic inversion. Most positional formation abilities targets are inverted. So it inverts the targets. And what that means in this game is when you're looking at how a buff is going to be implied, and you read something like, if you'll note, suddenly Valentine has 0 stacks. So let's look at Ellywick. And Ellywick's powerful following says it increases the damage of champions in the column behind her. The way you need to read these abilities with Warduke in the formation is to add the word not before the directional. So Ellywick increases the damage of champions in the column not behind her. So in other words, Valentine's going to get her stack here instead. Or here instead. Did I just break your mind? Because that broke mine. It doesn't mean, to me it means, okay, I'm inverting it. Instead of column behind, it's column in front. No. It's any column that isn't the one directly behind her. So again, if there's a lot of people out there may look at this the software developer way, where it means anything other than the way I looked at it, and what confused the hell out of me is that it's the not. If it says in front of, it's not, it doesn't then become behind. It doesn't then become behind. It becomes everywhere that isn't in front of. If it says adjacent, it becomes everywhere that isn't adjacent. If it says within 2 adjacent slots, it's everywhere that isn't within 2 adjacent slots. Warduke breaks the game. Warduke does have an indicator also, because he wants to receive these as well. But it's kind of breaks the game, because a lot of champions, like tanks, that you want in the tank column, normally buff behind them. And now it's going to buff anything that isn't behind them, which is odd, but that can be in the same column, and maybe Warduke can exist there. Warduke changes the way you're going to use every champion in the game that has a positional formation ability, and that gives me a headache. Because I've spent 5.5 years trying to remember how all the champions work. And then he's just like, "Pah, loser." Oh, Warduke. Warduke gives me a headache. Warduke gives me a headache. I'm not gonna mess with this. That's the big thing with Warduke that I think confuses lots and lots of people. It confused me, at least. It's one of the reasons why I just can't. I love the idea of it. I love that they put in a champion that can do something that so changes everything that you know about the game. My brain breaks a bit because of it. But he does want to receive positional formation abilities. So you still want to use lots of positional formation abilities. Because of drawn to power, his damage is increased by an amount for each positional formation abilities affecting him, stacking multiplicatively. That's the good way. And buffs apply to the pre-stack multiplier. That's the broken way. So Warduke potentially broken amounts of damage because there's an item that buffs this. But you have to play that mind-breaky, well, for me, mind-breaky game. So he can be, he can, like Loopy said, he can be very powerful. Very, very powerful. It's Warduke, folks. Look, he's got a flaming sword. He can be very powerful. It doesn't just look cool. He can be very powerful. He's also got an action figure skin. It's just great. But also can hurt your brain. But also can hurt your brain. All right, final champion. This was on the list, and they were on the list, and I was like, really? And then I stopped and I thought about it, and I was like, oh, okay, I know exactly why they're on the list. Folks, say hello to Briv. Say hello to Briv. If you don't know who Briv is the most, arguably, the most OP champion in the game, in the sense that they do all the things and they do all of them well. Briv is tanking, healing, support, and speed. And speed. And what makes them complicated for some people is that speed portion. The rest of Briv's kit is pretty straightforward. When they get hit, they buff more. The more they get hit, the more they buff. They build up stacks. They've got defenses. They've got healing. They've got everything, and it's a little problematic. But their speed effect. Briv, who dat? New champion? Yeah, totally new champion. No. Their speed effect is called Unnatural Haste. It says they have a chance of sprinting forward quickly on steel springs after completing a new area. This actually consumes a certain number of his sprint stacks and requires at least 50 stacks to occur. And if you stop reading there and you've read everything else, you'll be like, well, how do you get sprint stacks? Because I know they get Netheries, they get Steelbone stacks, but what's a sprint stack? And a lot of people, I feel like, stop there. When you reset the adventure, that means you complete the adventure. All stacks of steel bones that Briv has gained, and those are earned by him getting hit, convert into stacks of sprint. So you have to get hit a lot. Like if I were to end right now, I would have no steel bone stacks, so I would add nothing to my sprint stacks. So their speed ability only functions if they have sprint stacks. And a lot of people just don't get that. They're like, how do I get... And they don't understand how many they need, because it doesn't reduce like, hey, we're going to take 10 away every level you jump. No, it removes a percent. It removes a percent. This is the proper way to do it, by the way, is to remove a percent. Because what you don't want is somebody just stacking up like 1,000,000 stacks, which I did once. Just because I could. Because then they could jump forever and ever, and they'd have so many stacks, and that's not the way they want it to work. They want you to push deep with Briv, get hit a lot, and on the next run, you're going to get rewarded for that by moving quicker through it. So by removing a percent, you burn through, like the higher the number, still the further you can go, but it's limited based off the way it's chunking that down by a percent. Okay. Oh, I should point out, Warduke does have a thing here he will tell you that something has been inverted. It doesn't change the wording. It just puts this note in. So, yeah. But at least you know, right? So Briv is considered, I guess, for some people, a complicated champion because of that. Sure. Just know you do have to push deep to build up stacks. That's just the way Briv works. That's just the way Briv works. Yeah. There's a whole in-game gem farming situation that's built around Briv. You going far enough for Briv to get attacked and build up enough stacks to start over and do it again, and it's still the most efficient way in the game to farm gems. It just is, because he can become that powerful. He can currently there's no cap on the number of zones he can jump based off how many item levels you pump into Theodinarax here. It will be capped in the future, supposedly, at 9 jumps. But skipping 9 areas that's still a lot. Yeah. So yeah, that's the big thing. That's the big complication is most people just, how do we even build sprint stacks? How do I do it if I'm not pushing too far? You don't. You have to push far. He's not an always on speed champion like some other champions. Like Shandy has a very straightforward trigger. So does Deacon. Some are that way all the time. Like Human, as long as they're in the front column or columns. Virgil, like their speed mechanics are just on. Melf, they're just on. Briv requires a little investment for the power, and rightly so, because he's just way too strong otherwise. All right, looks like we got about 10 questions in the queue. Folks, remember, they only go in the queue if you put question colon in front of them, so if you need to re-ask. If you already asked, it's already been grabbed with question colon, but we're going to do a short musical interlude. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Life of the party, torn from the grave. She never follows, she won't behave. Tentacles and pearls, she'll tear apart your world. Slippers of the mind, head of mine is frail. Princess fortune pain. Fear is her domain. She's a nightmare, clad in velvet. Can't escape her in your hand. If she wants it, she will take it. Twist your thoughts and cut your thread. Your mind is hers to play. Happy Valentine's Day. Betray beheading, scars left to hide. She will release the dark inside. Death's not eternal, she's not your friend. You're just a tool, means to an end. For I can't find a rich terror in your mind. She's a nightmare.
I like that song. It's a good song. That's a song for Valentine, if you didn't pick that up with the whole title, Happy Valentine's Day. It's like right there. Folks, I want to apologize. I was started singing along to that song and went to turn off captions, and so that it wouldn't show up that I was singing the song when we came back from the break, and realized that my captions had been broken from the start of the show and it never worked. I have made a dark sacrifice, and now they are functioning again, but my apologies to anyone who usually relies on those. I am upset at myself that I didn't notice that they weren't working. Okay, I'm going to hit up the questions. I'm going to hit the stuff that's on today's topic first, then we'll go back and we'll hit all the stuff. I see some new player questions in here too. We'll hit everything. We'll get there. We will get there. So... this is sort of on the topic. Regis 2K. What do affiliations exactly do, and which is better for Arkhan since he has two? Well, first off, you don't choose affiliations. They choose you. Or you just are in them. Arkhan does have two affiliations. That's just, they're telling you what groups he's a part of. He was a part of Force Grey. The stream series is part of the Dark Order, which is part of a campaign book. They're just saying, hey, these are the groups he rolls with. And Arkhan rolls with two. So there's no choice there. It is, you either are affiliated or you're not. Now, what do they do? It really just depends on the affiliation. Some affiliations, like Force Grey, have nothing that they really do, other than to say, hey, we're affiliated. Other affiliations, like the Dark Order, might offer up a synergy type ability that gives bonuses based off the number of their members in a formation. There also might be situations where, like with the Black Dice Society, Nahara has a specialization choice. She's over here in 3. She's a member, where she qualifies for all Patron Strahd stuff. And she has a specialization that will bring every other Black Dice Society member in with her, even if they normally wouldn't qualify. So affiliations can have a variety, everything from nothing going on as a bonus to major stuff going on as a bonus. And it's going to be described in their kit as to what that effect is if they have one. Dilettante, does Usurp work better with Artemis? Oh no. We're crossing the streams. Artemis is another champion who loves positional formation abilities. And so it kind of, I don't want to say yes. I don't use Artemis a lot. I'm not a fan of positional formation abilities based champions. If you haven't figured that out, it's just not my. It's not the peanut butter I want with my chocolate. Actually, it's the other way around. It's the wrong kind of chocolate for me and my taste to go with the peanut butter that I'm eating. That's the better way to put it. There are situations where using the two in combination can create better stuff for you. It's really going to be about what it is you're trying to do, in my opinion. That question is better asked of an Artemis main who, loves crunching on Artemis. Yeah. But situationally, yes. In every situation, I don't know. But situationally, yes. There are ways. Like, if you're doing Orkira stacking, which is a manipulative way to boost her debuff, it's based around having Artemis and Arkhan. Artemis is the big one, but if you can have Arkhan in there too, there's a big bonus where he's usurping stuff, and then Artemis is observing, and numbers get a lot bigger. But I don't want to just say, because I haven't used that combo in every situation, I don't want to say yes in every situation. Yeah. Loopy 79. Dang it. Lauren, if you have... swear whenever we start talking about these combos of champions, I know I'm going to get into places that I'm not an expert on. If you haven't already, by the time you get to question time, can you explain the precise interactions between Arkhan, Valentine, and Artemis? It is my understanding that Valentine doesn't really work well with Arkhan and Artemis. And it has to do with the way she, with when she applies her bonuses. So, right here, this happens after Artemis's observation ability, but I'm told it doesn't really work well with Arkhan's either. I could be wrong there. But yeah. So not really the big bonus. When Valentine was announced, I was like, oh no. Like thinking this just made Artemis go through the roof. But this line effectively null and voids what's going on there. It doesn't make it outrageous. So you can't direct everything and hit both Artemis and Valentine and then get everything majorly boosted all over again. Because what would happen is what people want to happen is Valentine redistributes to all the DPS at a higher rate, and then Artemis observes that higher rate, and that's not the way it works. It's just a small bonus after. And with Arkhan, Arkhan's not usurping. Arkhan has the DPS tag, so he's not usurping. He's receiving directly from Valentine, so there's no bonus. Yeah, see, trigger him directly. There is no ability to. There's no way to boost and hit somebody other than Arkhan because he has the DPS tag. So it wouldn't really work well on him either. I mean, there's going to be a little bonus there, but it's not the super cyan ability people wanted it to be. Real Bunny Beast, I think I answered this one during, but being a software developer myself, could you please explain how you interpret inverted regarding Warduke? Yeah. It's the whole thing where if it says, buffs ahead of, then I think it should just then but like a column ahead. To me, that means it now buffs the column behind, but for software developers, and I guess a lot of people that aren't me, it means buffs everywhere else. And that's just not how my brain interprets that. I am very, I very studied philosophy in college. Logic is a thing. And to me, the logic of that means inverted means it's just the opposite. I go from this way to that way. I go from up to down. I go from backwards to forward. And that's not where they're going. And that's fine. Inverted is a bad word. Well, I think so. But the thing is, for software developers, that's what inverted means. So, and guess what? This is a video game made by software developers. So, yeah. Griegel talking about Briv. What does it mean that Briv will stop and fight every available boss enemy on his way? I see him skip boss enemies all the time. Briv only jumps bosses in free plays. The first time you do an adventure, it's not a free play. And when you're in a variant, you can only do it once. In those cases, Briv will stop at every boss along the way, even if his jump ability would have him jump over them. Because you have to play the game. And the game is boss fights. That's the hard part of this game, is the boss fights. He wasn't always that way. They changed him. Originally, he just skipped the game. And they finally fixed that. But they allow him to jump in free plays, which enables, people to do wild gem farming. Wild gem farming. Yeah. It's a very literal choice. Y'all are thinking of inverted only a binary. Well, but that's the way. Here's the thing, Jen Lando. That's, in my experience, that's how most people think of inverted. As an opposite. To say that it's the logical definition of inverted is to be all the other choices. That's not what most people, in my experience, that's not what most people think of as inverted. And when Warduke came out, people were having issues. They were having the same issues I was having. So for people who are finding Warduke complicated, it's because that isn't a natural assumption. So I understand it now. I do. That doesn't mean my brain likes it. Doesn't mean my brain likes it. So to me, it's just the straight logical. It's just the opposite. It's just the opposite, as opposed to anything that isn't. As opposed to anything that isn't. I'm not gonna, folks. I'm not gonna sit here and. I have already said this is how my brain thinks about it. This is clearly how a lot of people thinks about it. I don't need people trying to convince me that this is the normal way. Maybe that is for you, but guess what? Not everybody thinks like you do, and that's what these guides are for. So, questions. We're on to the general questions. General questions, sir. Poison Onion. I'm new to this game. Should I, first off, welcome. Should I finish the first campaign before I go to the second? No. Absolutely not. And do I need a specific amount of favor before I should switch? Not really. It kind of depends on what your goals are in each campaign. I've got a guide for you. It's my new player reference. Somebody can hopefully link it in chat. There's a command for that. If you're in the very first campaign, Grand Tour of the Sword Coast, this is what in the game is referred to as an endless campaign. As an endless campaign. That means not that you can go forever and ever and never run out of content. It means that they will always be adding new content to it. Whereas the other campaigns are based off campaign books that Wizards of the Coast released. And there is a very finite story that happens. So Tomb of Annihilation is a completed campaign in the sense that they have done everything they're going to do. There's all the adventure nodes, and there's 3 variants for every node. That means it's done. Same with Waterdeep Dragon Heist. 3 variants in every node. So while you might, some people might try to push all the way through, there's even a branching storyline, and try to do everything in Sword Coast. I think that's probably not the best idea for a new player, because it gets much and much harder. Because it has been developed slowly over time in conjunction with these. And as the story progresses, it's getting harder and harder along the levels of these harder and harder campaigns. And without getting stuff from the other campaigns, it just might make you have a no good, very bad day. And maybe you get frustrated. And I don't want that. But there are things you can look at with the amount of favor that you earn. Like I generally recommend in my guide that along with grabbing Dritz Do'Urden out of the Sword Coast campaign, you should stay there and farm favor until you can unlock this tier 2 blessing, Gem Hunter. Because gems are kind of a big deal in this game. And even though it's just +1 per boss, it adds up. It adds up a lot. So, yeah. But it isn't like, oh, hey, grab all of the things, right away. No. I think you get certain things from each campaign and you bounce. And some of those things might require some favor, like that blessing requires a certain amount of favor in Sword Coast. It's not overly difficult to get, but it does require a decent amount of favor for a new player. Then you go on to Tomb of Annihilation, and I do believe you should do these in order, one after the other, and not skip ahead, because these were released and do in this order and increase in difficulty as you go along. Sword Coast, again, it increases difficulty in itself, but Tomb of Annihilation, easiest campaign in the game. Its blessings really just make it easy for you to snowball power in and complete it. Waterdeep Dragon Heist isn't as snowbally, but overall pretty straightforward. Baldur's Gate is the first of what we start calling hard campaigns. It is harder. I would say now it's probably medium difficulty, but medium to hard rating, where it gets... Mainly, it's that the favor you need to get blessings is greatly increased, which means the power on your overall account between all kinds of things like blessings, perks, Modron cores, legendary, you have to have that to really get all the blessings. And you may not be able to do that right away. You can do the adventure, you can do the main campaign, but you might not be able to do all the variants, and you may not be able to get all the blessings. Icewind Dale, again, difficult. Wild Beyond the Witchlight, even more so. And as we're going down here, one of the things that makes it difficult, along with just the health and scaling on things like blessings, is the fact that the completion areas are higher and higher. The most recent stuff in Wild Beyond the Witchlight, this variant, Coasting to the Finish, Area 1000. Quicker Quack, Area 1050. If you try to skip ahead, ain't gonna happen. The regular stuff is lower, but the variants suddenly are much, much higher, and thus more difficult to get through. So you do kind of want to do them in order, and there is a certain amount of favor you might want to grab from each of them, but not necessarily trying to complete them totally in order. It's grab what you need, move forward, grab what you need, move forward. Okay, I'm going to try to get through the rest of these. We got about 20 minutes left. Mothlol, what should new players focus on when it comes to spending gems, chests, familiars, and favor? Invest in blessings or just stack gold 5%? Let's tackle gems first. The very first thing you want to spend gems on in the game is that 250 gem Mage Hand familiar. After that, you are bouncing between chests and familiars. As you go to look at your gem totals, if you have enough for a familiar, another familiar, grab it. If you don't, buy some chests. You don't necessarily need to scrimp and save to get that next familiar, because they start getting more and more expensive. It's going to take longer and longer to get to. And opening chests gets you power in a multitude of ways, and that's going to help you complete content and earn gems faster. So going back and forth between the two is good. Start off with silver chests until you have at least green, that uncommon gear on all of your core, those starting champions, the core 12. Once they're green, switch to gold chests, and then open gold chests like forever, and bounce between gold chests and familiars as you can. As for favor, you want to spend it when you get it, but you want to make sure that you have this box checked. If it looks like this, danger, Will Robinson, danger. Don't spend any. Make sure the green check mark is there. It just works. The warning is right. The warning is right. It just works. So if you hit the button to spend and it does it without a little pop-up that says, "Are you sure?" Keep hitting that button. Once the pop-up comes up, say no, move on to the next. and just, optimize whatever blessings you can get, move forward. That general rule of thumb works incredibly well. Probably one of the most useful little checkboxes in the game, in all honesty. The most useful checkbox in the game. Fubuki Kamiya, what happens if you buy a feat from the patron shop for a champion you don't own? It goes in like their storage. And when you unlock that champion, you will get it. Is my understanding. That is my understanding. 3no100 wanted to know, how should I transcript stat info? Expressions like damage increased by a certain E12% into common DPS value or in a percentage. It is the way it is. If damage is increased by E12%, that's the multiplier. E12%, this is scientific notation, so 1.74 E12% in your example here is 1, and then you move the decimal point to the right 12 times, which would be adding like 10 zeros after the 4, right? And that's a percent, and that is the value. It's just because we deal with such large numbers, we use scientific notation, because at the end of the day, you look at the E number, did it go up or did it go down? And that makes it real simple, as opposed to trying to remember, is this millions, billions, quintillions, septillions, sextillions, octogenarians? No, that's not the right thing. Yeah. So we use the E's. It is a percentage already. It is a multiplier on damage. So that is the common value. If you're not using scientific notation, hit Y on your keyboard if you're on PC, or go into the settings, switch it to scientific notation. It may take a little while to get used to, but it will make your life in this game so much better. Poison Onion, which champion should I get at first when I can use a time gate? A speed champion to go faster? Maybe. Look, all things being equal, picking Briv up as soon as possible is never going to hurt you in the long run. It's only going to help you. Another champion, that was the slot 5 champion we were talking about, that's super OP. Another champion that's only going to help you early on, Krull in slot 6. That being said, we usually recommend that when you actively open time gates as a newer player, that your target should be trying to get an extra champion in every bench slot. So make sure that every bench slot has one of these swippy swappy buttons. That's the technical term, swippy swappy button. Because when you do that, when you have one in every slot, this box will be here. You'll be able to click over here and do an adventure called Split the Party. It's going to give you your first Modron core, this one right here, the Modest core, and a background party. The Modest core is the big deal. Cores are, there's a whole game you play with cores. Why is that? It shouldn't be piped out like that. That's better. There's a whole game you play with cores that makes it look like what I just did. They level up, they give you power. Getting into that game as soon as possible is arguably better than grabbing the OP champions early on, in my opinion. But again, Briv, Krull, I can't recommend them enough for new players. Briv's going to need an investment of gear, and item levels. He'll consume all of your blacksmith contracts early, but Krull just does Krull things without needing any help. Krull can be what we call naked with no items and be a huge boost to a brand new player. Renee Brazow, in Thayan Enclave event, where should I spend first? I don't have many corrupted gems. It's really up to you. I find that it's super up to what you want to get out of it. If you want some cool skins that would normally only be available for cash, get them. If you want golden epics that would normally only be available for cash, get them. The feats, if you want them right away, you could spend gems on them, but the feats will end up, you can spend corrupted gems on them. The feats will end up as part of their kit and purchasable with regular gems 3 to 6 months in the future. So the ones that say limited time, they're only available for 4 more days, they're about 3 months away. This one that doesn't have a timer on it is about 6 months away. I see these as previews of upcoming stuff. I don't recommend stuff down here. Maybe the only exception is this would be okay, but don't spend here. There's other ways to get what comes in these chests that aren't as exclusive as these. Now, if you're talking about what's the most powerful thing I can get, what's the most bang for my corrupted gem buck, it's these. These are triple damage bonuses. Every time you apply them, it's a triple damage bonus. They go on support champions, on epic items on support champions. If you don't have lots of epic items yet, that's fine. You can bank them up and use them in the future. But this is the most bang for your buck, power-wise, generally speaking. But if you spend it on other things, that's totally okay. Totally okay. Emergence events are going to happen regularly. You'll get more gems. It's fine. No Mercy Nerd, how do your familiars appear stationary and not clicking? There's a setting for that. And it's a disable like flashing lights or whatever, which obviously doesn't seem like that should be it. Graphics. Disable flashing lighting effects. At the bottom it says click touch animations on familiars. And it's because there's a flash when they do the click. But there. And then I have them just kind of sitting calmly instead of going real fast because I always animate familiars at 1x. Otherwise, they give me a headache. Patricius, thanks for the great guides. You're welcome. Folks, if you don't know, I make guides for the game. That's why the CNE has me do these tutorials. I have over 130 guides at the link that hopefully the bot is going to put in chat. You might want to check those out if you're newer. Do you think it's worth it to invest green corrupted gems in skins for Oral's Blessing costume party? Not really, no. I kind of ignore that exists. I kind of wish it didn't exist, honestly. It was the first time this game ever truly made it so you have to spend money to get power, and I'm kind of like, you could have done without that. So I just ignore it. I don't think it matters too much. Fitzroy writes, I have almost enough favor for another golden epic in the emergence event. I got Dragon Bait. Should I get a Vondra's or Mirrors? Did you get who? No, the Humans is a feat. It's G. So if you're going all in on the GEs, and you got Dragon Baits, high sorcery or health. Look, health on a tank is kind of what makes a tank, was one of the main things that makes a tank a tank. It's basically you're going to get a 100% bonus on the health, so on whatever the health value the item provides. That could be nice. She has a lower overwhelm point, and is a little squishier, kind of on purpose. So that could be nice, yeah. This is just going to be a boost to the buff from high sorcery. Yeah. I mean, if I were going to go between one or the other, having a boost on the health of a tank is probably what I would favor, just to make that tank more functional. Grigel, would you use the pigment on Human or Briv? Yes. Well, no. Here's the thing. The pigment is going to get you pushing power. If I were going to put it somewhere, I'd put it on Briv, and I think I did. Yeah, I have a pigment on Briv. I personally don't use Human for pushing, so I did not put a pigment on them. I use them for speed. I bring in somebody else for pushing. But sure, they're both supports, and if you're going to use them to push with, pigment them up. But if they're just a speed champion for you, then put it on someone you're using to actually push with, because you're getting a damage bonus. Yeah. All right. I think we're going to call it there. That's all the questions I have. Plus, we're coming to the end. Folks, this is the last stream of the weekend for the CNE Games channel. There is... Hold on. There is a stream on Monday, special stream on Monday, 4 p.m. Pacifically. There's a special D&D one-shot. Check that out. That's when streams will return. I, however, stream as well. I stream over on my channel, twitch.tv/Gaarawarr. The name's right down there. Spelled like it sounds, but, you know, it's spelled out on the screen. Come give me a follow. I play Idle Champions on Mondays and Wednesdays. And then on Tuesdays and Saturday afternoons, which is today, I play other games. So come hang out. There's a tag on the channel that says bad puns. Just understand that's going to happen at some point during the stream. But we have a good time over there. And on the Idle Champion streams, hey, you know, I'm always around for questions. What song are we going out on? Oh, Warduke. Of course. Of course it's Warduke. Of course it is. Thanks everybody for hanging out today. Thanks Gabe for managing everything. I will see you all soon. Bye everybody.
By his name, only by his sword of flame, red eyes glowing in the dark. No, he'll never miss his mark. Winged helm of darkness blazing in the night. Nightmare sleep beneath him, yearning for a fight. It's Warduke, watch out, he's coming for you. It's Warduke, no doubt he'll split you in two. It's Warduke, you fool, they paid him with gold. It's Warduke, so cruel, your life has been sold. Warduke, Warduke. Who never seen his face? They just find the mess he makes. Once the friend who holds strong heart, his evil ways tore them apart. The Heartstone made him evil, now he shuns the light. Once he was a hero.